marijuana.
This is the way it's been since she started smoking pot.
Where you from? Not where I'm from. We all indigenous against our lies. I scribbled up.
It's been over a month since we've done a Deep Dives episode. Feels good to be back, right? Nayo missed y'all. I did too. I'm not trying to say I didn't. In this series, we talk about topics that impact American culture through a socioeconomic and often very Black lens. Welcome back. I've never smoked weed. Keyword there is smoked. But at least half of the people watching this have used cannabis in some form before. I've been exactly 3 times, and I'll tell you about all 3 by the end of this video. So stick around. My views on cannabis have come a long way, mostly due to the fact that I've learned more about it. I'm a rapper and I live in Atlanta. Almost everybody I've worked with uses cannabis in some form. That's not only true of my music collaborators, it's true of my corporate coworkers too. Cannabis doesn't have a race, ethnicity, nationality, or socioeconomic class attached to it. It belongs to everybody. But not everybody enjoys the profits, now that it's widely legalized. Today, we're talking about cannabis capitalism. Who runs these legal weed businesses? What's happening with legality? How we got here? Who's still in prison for it? And what are the pros and cons of weed use? The real ones, with cited sources so we can end the debates. Don't like this video or subscribe to the channel, by the way. I have nothing else to show you. I'm sure y'all have seen plenty of documentaries about weed. So what makes this one different? I'm posing a question I want y'all to answer in the comments. What should the legal limitations be, if any? Age, health conditions, etc. Let me know. Should Hershey's be selling weed brownie mix in Walmart? Should we have custom bongs locked up behind glass in Target? If you don't have an answer yet, you're in the right place. If you have a very confident answer, keep watching and broaden your horizons and perspective a little bit. I took a before this video started, and hopefully it doesn't hit until the end.
It's awfully hard to have people in jail right now for something that's legal.
They have a rap sheet. It shows an arrest for narcotics.
Grasses are the social thing that brings people together.
So I'm going to try to name as many weed strains as I can in a minute, and I will try not to hybridize too much, because when you put in hybrids, it's just too much. We'll never get through it. All right, am I ready? Go.
There's so many names for cannabis and its various strains that it's actually necessary for me to explain the basics before we get to the capitalism part. So let's get that out of the way. All the professional smokers watching this, you might learn something too. All right, so there's this plant that everybody recognizes by now called Cannabis sativa L. The terms cannabis and marijuana both refer to the dried leaves, flowers, stems, and seeds of that plant. There's at least 125 different compounds referred to as cannabinoids within that plant. Which one gets you high? By high, I mean it alters people's mood, thoughts, and perceptions. That would be Delta-9 THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol. The hydro part is actually where one of Atlanta's nicknames for weed in the 2000s comes from. As I mentioned before, that ain't the only compound in cannabis though. There's non-intoxicating compounds like cannabidiol or CBD. It's marketed for a lot of uses, many of them medicinal. To wrap this up, cannabis plants with small, non-intoxicating amounts of THC are called hemp, and they're used for textile fiber and edible seed oils, for example. There's always more to explain on a scientific level, but that's all you need to know to get us on the same page.
Train wreck, lemon haze.
We've covered the definitions, so let's talk about what the industry looks like today. It's a new game entirely, and unless we tell you these company names, you probably won't hear them again.
You looking like an easy come up, yeah, bitch. Yeah, bitch. Hey, silver spoon, I know you come from, yeah, bitch.
First off, these companies are not small. Cannabis requires a ton of space and resources to grow and process, meaning the big cats are the only ones that got the bread to pull this off. Let's meet the top players by market value. Innovative Industrial, market cap $3.3 billion. They call themselves the leading provider of real estate capital for the regulated cannabis industry. And As you can see, that isn't an exaggeration. We're counting them here because they enable the rest of these to function in the first place. Here's their board of directors. I'm sure they're all very nice people. Curaleaf, market cap $3.1 billion. This is our first legit cannabis company, and they seem to be the top dog. The site looks like a company worth that much, with the smoothest user experience and slickest product presentation you could ask for. I wish this one was saying they got hot dog edibles, but I think it's just a serving suggestion. Here's their executive team. I'm sure they're also all very nice people. Green Thumb Industries. These names, man. Market cap $2.74 billion. I don't have anything unique to say about this one that wasn't true about the last one, except for the fact that they lean harder into the family-friendly brand aesthetic with really soft language in their marketing copy. There's a lot of emphasis on social impact, too. If they weren't a billion-dollar company, I'd feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Here's their executive team. I'm sure they're all very nice people. True Leave Cannabis. Market cap, blah, blah. I got an eye for fonts. Y'all see that eye? Same type of eye from Green Thumb Industries site. The font isn't exactly the same, but it might as well be. One copied the other to the best of their ability. Color green is a pretty obvious common thread for a pretty obvious reason. If I can say anything about this company that stands out, it would be their apparent focus on scientific properties and education about the product. Not saying the others didn't do that, but it's front and center here. Here's their executive team. In case the message hasn't landed by now, I'm pointing out that nobody at the top of these companies looks like me. I don't need a percentage or a quota. They don't even have a token. Some of y'all may see that as a pointless complaint, as if I'm race baiting for no reason. Hold that thought until we get to the numbers in the prison section.
Blue Dream, Headband, Sour D.
These companies are rich. Their sites are dope, but that isn't the real point. How does it affect the states you live in? I say you because Georgia hasn't legalized any form of cannabis with THC. We got lightweight edibles though, and it's obviously not hard to get weed here. 24 states and DC have legalized medicinal and/or recreational use. Here they are in dark and light green. I'll leave that on screen. 8 in 10 Americans, 79% of us, live in a county with a cannabis dispensary, and 74% live in a state where it's at least legal for medicinal use. Cali has more dispensaries than any other state, by far. 3.6K total, which is more than twice the second place state. Y'all got a quarter of all of them in your state. You could probably walk outside and see one right now. This world these companies and pro-marijuana advocates talk about, where weed is accepted and available, is just about here in a large chunk of the country. And the criminalization side reflects that change in sentiment. Y'all know we can't do this piece without talking about people that look like me getting locked up. Well, it's not just people that look like me. To do this convo justice, we got to talk about the war on drugs and how we got here in the first place. Before we do that,
OG Kush, Northern Lights.
the first time I ever got like most things young hetero men do that doesn't match their typical pattern of behavior, it was connected to a woman. It was my second time ever seeing her, and the first time we met up formally. There was this event I'd never been to before called Bonfire ATL. And what makes that day particularly memorable is that I got in a car crash on the way there when I was a block away from the venue. Not a fender bender either. My got rocked off the road after getting T-boned at an intersection. Police came, lied, and blamed it on me. Not surprising. And our cars got towed off. So I'm standing in the street with no car, 1 block away from this party. I walked my ass over there and had the time of my life. I'd never smoked a blunt and didn't start that night, but I did get a Jell-O edible from this vendor. Everybody watching this knows how delayed that high is, and this one was not an exception. I remember my brain slowing down in real time when it finally hit me. Technically, that was our first date. Marijuana isn't as demonized now as it used to be, outside of certain religious circles at least. Gen Z and millennials like myself haven't been around long enough to really appreciate the changing attitudes towards the industry over time, or the political forces that turned our communities upside down. So let's rewind. After I tell y'all how I got my face so smooth. I didn't use razors for most of my adulthood. I used the same trimmers on my hairline and my facial hair because I was terrified of getting razor bumps. I saw the irritation and permanent discoloration on friends' jawlines and decided to steer clear of it altogether. Today's sponsor, Henson Shaving, wasn't the first razor I used either, but they were the best. At this point, I'm sure y'all have tried the newer razors on the market and picked a favorite. But what if I told you that after your initial purchase of a razor, they offer free blades for life for only $50? Yeah, that caught my attention too. You'd end up saving like $200 with double-sided blades, or $5,000 if you use cartridges. These razors were produced in Canada, not China, and they're all aluminum, with the packaging being plastic-free. If none of that is particularly game-changing for you, check this out. Their razor has a 30-degree angle and extends 0.003 inches above the skin, which is less than the thickness of your hair. Their blades are industry standard, and they got them down to 10 cents a piece, which is 25 times less than the bloated cost y'all might be used to. That's how this makes sense for them. And I got a code for y'all to make sure this makes sense for you too. Hit hensonshaving.com/CamJames to get free shaving cream with the purchase of a razor. It's really that simple. The link's in the description and on screen. Now, we can rewind. This is gonna seem obvious. Every illegal drug was once legal, even if that's only because the government didn't know about it yet. The public's concern about potential negative effects led to the first study being commissioned in 1860. By 1890, medical experts thought it was a narcotic that should be regulated. That's extra false, by the way. The definition of narcotics that we need to focus on is having the effect of relieving pain and inducing drowsiness, stupor, or insensibility. Weed absolutely does all of the above, as many of y'all know, but it's also a stimulant on top of being a depressant. We'll get into other side effects in the pros and cons section. Moving on.
Blueberry haze, purple nurple.
1914, the Harrison Act touched down, which made drug use a federal crime. Ironically, Cali was the first state to make possession illegal in 1915. The Marijuana Tax Act passed in 1937, and in 1956, marijuana was officially included in the Federal Narcotics Control Act. The ridiculous decision to make it a Schedule I narcotic happened in 1970, and we know nobody was smoking weed in the 70s. What does Schedule I mean? It's the first domino in the pattern that led to your cousin being locked up 4 times for possession in the 90s. Schedule I narcotics are described as having no acceptable medical use and have the highest potential for misuse. This carries strong legal penalties on the federal level and hasn't been changed yet, despite cannabis being legalized for medicinal and recreational use in many states. Believe it or not, Nixon had the chance to get the ball rolling on decriminalization. He created a commission to take another look. And they were like, nah, dog, we shouldn't be sending people to prison for rolling up. He didn't do anything with that recommendation, but states started rolling back their harsh laws very slowly. We came full circle in '96 when Cali was the first to legalize marijuana use. Probably in response to pot getting shot, but don't quote me on that. I think it's safe to say that while state governments made their own decisions based on their need for tax revenues, the federal government has dragged their feet on assessing marijuana. They've been pushed on it though. In 2015, 8 Democratic senators called for more research into the health benefits. And in 2018, the FDA approved a CBD drug called Epidiolex that treated seizures, specifically seizures stemming from 2 specific forms of epilepsy in patients aged 2 or older. The DEA heard that and said, oh, word? We're gonna roll back that specific formulation back from Schedule 1 to Schedule 5. It obviously ain't that dangerous. I'm paraphrasing. After Biden pardoned federal convictions for simple possession charges a couple years ago, Dr. Levine from the Department of Health and Human Services put out a formal recommendation. I'm gonna paraphrase her too. Hey, yo, Cannabis is not no damn narcotic. Roll it back to Schedule 3, at least. Just so y'all know, Schedule 3 drugs have legitimate medical uses and moderate to low risk of dependency. Sounds like weed to me. To be clear, they didn't listen to her, which is par for the course in America. We passed up an important detail in the late 80s while we were reviewing all that legal stuff. Ronald Reagan's war on drugs. The Anti-Drug Abuse Acts of 86 and 89 led directly to increased militarization of police, disproportionate targeting of largely black neighborhoods, and a sharp increase in drug-related arrests. I'll put that in quotations because a lot of them were bullshit. There's several forms of racism. Interpersonal racism gets talked about a lot because it's easy to understand and easy to see. You call me a slur and talk about how my is bigger than yours. That's simple. What's not so simple is the concept of structural racism, which we've actually explained on the channel before. The totality of ways in which societies foster racial discrimination through mutually reinforcing systems of housing, education, employment, earnings, benefits, credit, media, healthcare, and criminal justice. All those things I listed gang up and surround minorities with barriers to living the life they want to live. When you see us protesting, that's usually the kind of racism we're talking about. It's often subtle and baked into the way institutions operate, making it hard for those who benefit from that racism to acknowledge it fully. The war on drugs did a lot of very damaging things, but putting a battery in the back of structural racism has to be on top of that list. Changing cannabis laws doesn't fix these problems. It simply shifts the focus to the consequences of that racism, which is like using a Band-Aid to fix a gunshot wound. We need reparations. And if you disagree, hold that thought too. It might be news to y'all that despite the spike in arrests and harassment that happened during that war, the drop-off since legalization hit has been incredible. The best way to describe this next chart is... that's literally what they named the article. A layup. So easy. The arrest rate was heavily leaned towards black people before legalization, everywhere. As you can see, possession arrests basically vanished in both of these cities after legalization, while possession with intent to distribute got wiped out in LA, but stayed frequent in DC. For black people, that solid black line is us, while the faded one on the bottom is white people. Distribution charges went up big time, probably as a way to claw back some of that departmental revenue the system was losing. The biggest common thread I see is that existing while black drastically increases your chances of getting locked up. I know a lot of y'all are saying, duh, but the whole point here is to match the facts to what we all know via common sense. LA legalized marijuana for recreational use, and the cops went ham on us after. What that says to me is that existing laws are suffering from that same structural racism I just told y'all about.
God's gift, lamb's bread.
There's some good news here, though. On the federal level, inmates held for simple possession charges are a dying breed. Not literally. That would be terrible news. The total number of Fed prisoners had dropped to around 145 in 2021, from 2,100 in 2014. We got a very specific shout out for why these numbers dipped. The District of Arizona, which is really 9 districts. Since 2014, they've been responsible for 80% of federal marijuana possession cases. And they hate undocumented Hispanic men specifically. We're talking 86% male, 70% Hispanic, and 60% non-citizens, with 70% of defendants being sent to prison for an average of half a year. As upsetting as that is, let's zoom out to the US as a whole. There's been 0 offenders in federal custody for simple possession since January 2022, which is dope as f***. That leaves these problems to the states, where some are clearly better than others at handling it. The second time I got this one is really straightforward. I was at a Kaytranada concert. Huge fan, love most of his work. He was a headliner to wrap up this tech conference called Render ATL, and I rolled solo. I had no plans to do drugs that day, but some friends of mine rolled in halfway through the night, and the first thing they said was, "Want an edible? It's only 10 milligrams." I still didn't know anything about amounts and what effect they have, so I was like, sure. Joint didn't hit me for real until I was in the Uber on the way home. This Uber was Batman themed with lights and designs inside. So that was a hell of a trip. I know this story is the equivalent of a lightweight experience for every person at Coachella, but y'all gotta remember that I never do this.
Crazy, scary, spooky, hilarious, crazy, scary.
Give them what they asked for.
They're a despicable bunch, actually. They're, as we find, as a result of our investigations, dirty, despicable, crummy individuals that, you'd think they never took a bath.
Everyone watching this probably knows from experience, there are downsides to using cannabis in just about all of its forms. That clip was a joke, but there's a smell when it's smoked that I'm not fond of personally. There's very obvious temporary impairment, and many would say enhancement, of a lot of people's motor and cognitive skills. And inhaling any kind of smoke on a regular basis is damaging to your respiratory system. There's many upsides as well, as I'm sure plenty of y'all are typing in the comments right now. I'm pro marijuana, to be clear. I've seen people use it as a sleeping aid, concentration aid, pain reliever, and sometimes as a spark of inspiration. Never liked the very obvious dependence I've witnessed in some people though. It's none of my business. But needing weed to get through the day normally seems more like a hindrance than anything else. That's all surface level though. I want to talk about what it's like for people trying to get jobs when they use cannabis in a state where it's completely legal, whether medically or recreationally. Y'all might think it's all good in legal states, but companies don't necessarily change their policies just because you're allowed to smoke off hours. The Marijuana Policy Project dug deep this year and found that drug testing doesn't result in improved workplace safety. THC stays in your system way too long to effectively pin down when the person used it. So people can lose their jobs for smoking days or weeks before. That fact pushes them towards more dangerous drugs to deal with their needs, like opioids. Hopefully, I don't have to explain what the danger level is when you start down that road. Every state allows employers to fire people that show up to work high, which is fair. And states handle legal use outside of work differently. 9 of the legal recreational states have employment protections, while 22 of the medicinal states have them. Some states have even added cannabis to the same laws protecting you from getting fired for using tobacco off duty, which is good news. Remember the Schedule 1 thing from earlier? Yeah, it's still illegal federally, which gives most companies the green light to have a zero tolerance policy. They don't care about legality, and it's their right to set those rules. Your workplace is not a democracy, and nobody can make them keep you employed. Medical marijuana users aren't covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act either, which, of course, rolls back up to the fact that it's federally illegal.
Filene's Basement, Degenerate Chicago.
The tide is turning, though. In 2017, a terminated employee successfully secured the right to sue her former employer in Massachusetts in the Barbudo versus Advantage Sales and Marketing LLC case, which led to a settlement. All right, we made it to the benefits. NAO called this section the bennies in their notes, so that's what we're going with. According to the National Institute of Health, along with every state that legalized medical marijuana, there's a gang of symptom treatments made possible by cannabis. The working theory is that cannabinoids reduce pain by altering pain perception pathways in the brain. Epilepsy, nausea, and vomiting you get from cancer chemotherapy. Loss of appetite and weight loss you get from HIV/AIDS. Modest benefits for chronic pain, no pun intended, and symptoms of multiple sclerosis. Everyone watching this knows someone who suffers from one of those on the list. Back pain and sleeping problems at the very least. Some other conditions it can treat include severe anxiety, IBS, movement disorder due to Tourette syndrome, and PTSD. Being is also just enjoyable under the right circumstances. Speaking from experience. Marijuana even has an edge on the negative side effects of ibuprofen, which is so normalized by now that y'all recognize it on the same level as its multiple brand names. If you had the opportunity to reduce a loved one's shaking due to Parkinson's disease, or a veteran's traumatic stress disorder, or rheumatoid arthritis, Your grandparents might suffer from that. And you held reservations about marijuana due to the social stigma. Would you still move forward or no? I actually want to hear from people who don't like the idea of it. Let me know in the comments. The patients themselves swear it's hella effective, and I tend to prefer listening to the source.
So quickly. Isn't that amazing?
He used just a single drop, and his hands afterwards were rock steady, and the dyskinesia left.
It was swing back. It works most of the time. In fact, it's...
It's given my life back. It has helped tremendously with pain issues. It has helped where I can feel like eating through the chemo, where before I could not hold anything down. I wasn't even hungry.
Okay, the third and last time I ever got. This one has a happy ending. As some of y'all know by now, I met my girlfriend on YouTube in the comments of this series. Shot my shot after some back and forth, and we ended up talking for a week before having our first date. Dating as a public person is a little different, since people have watched you for hours, usually in a non-creepy way, by the time you meet them for real. This makes them more comfortable with the idea of meeting you somewhere private. So our first date was at my apartment. I cooked, was a perfect gentleman, didn't try to make any moves, and I don't know if I want to broadcast who acquired the edibles and how, but we ended up taking some. Didn't hit after 20 minutes or so we took some more. These were small amounts. We knew it would have a delayed effect by now. Since we're both in our 30s, long story short, they didn't hit until the day after, because these had been sitting around for quite a while. We both felt like and had a cloudy-ass brain for basically the entire day. I would not be getting high with anyone else. At the beginning of this piece, I asked y'all a question. What should the legal limitations be, if any, on access to weed in America? Now that y'all got the background and the current status in various states, hopefully your opinions on the matter got just a little bit more clear. Cannabis is a huge part of a lot of people's daily lives, and I'm personally in support of anything that can take the edge off of some of the worst diseases and conditions we have. Even if we're talking recreational use, who cares? Caffeine is a stronger dependency that our government allows because it makes some people more productive, even though it destroys our sleep cycle, contributes to deforestation, wastes a lot of water, and intensifies climate change through all those goddamn coffee cups. Food is far more damaging since half our nutrition is fake here, and heart disease is the #1 killer worldwide. Stop eating McDonald's, please. You thought potheads dependence was bad. Opioids are on a whole nother level. Some people suffer on a level you can't understand unless you've seen it in person. Some religions have issues with cannabis use. Others have implemented it into their traditions and customs. If you don't plan on telling monks what to do with their opium, maybe keep the judgments to yourself. Hit me in the comments as always. Just don't try to ask me out. I'm very taken. That applies to women and men, for the record. Y'all got the information now. Can't say I ain't tell you.
Some of those weren't real.